mean, I wouldn't say that's something dumb to do, is it? It might be dumb to phrase it in that way. I think I want to marry you. Other than that, I would strongly encourage the gesture. And if I may speak from personal experience for a moment, you might also, if you are so inclined to ask someone to marry you, you might consider actually uttering the words, "Will you marry me?" Which apparently, in my haste or complete and utter lack of planning, I sorta forgot to do. Yes, I am speaking from very recent experience. My week and a bit off, feeling like a teacher, was filled with all kinds of things, including 2 baseball games in Toronto with some great friends, watching the Blue Jays win one game by a lot and lose one game by a lot, getting out on my motorcycle, which is my absolute favorite thing to do. But most importantly, and this may come as a surprise to some, especially if you are not one of my friends and or followers on social media, but I have finally decided after 11 years, no, I shouldn't even put it that way. I have come to my senses after 11 years, and I made a gesture to my beloved, who I have been committed to since day one. Nothing will ever shake me in that commitment. But what I finally realized is that maybe, just maybe, we should make it like officially official. So, yes, without actually uttering the words, "Will you marry me?" I did present my beloved after all of this time with this diamond ring thing. And we will, in very short order, officially make official my commitment to her. Again, it's been more than a decade. It's never been in doubt for me. I guess I'm just not very bright. And she has reminded me on numerous occasions since I presented said ring that I never actually did utter the words, "Will you marry me?" But she understood. After all this time, my goodness gracious, we can practically read each other's minds. So of all of the things that happened while I was away for the last week and a bit, that is far and away the most important of them. And my beloved remains just that, has always been and always will be. But we're gonna make it like official, like in the next little while. And no, you're not invited. So I'm sorry. It's not that I don't like you. I actually missed you a lot while I was gone. I'm glad to be back and ready to have these conversations with you. And by the way, you look fantastic today. You really do. You're having a great start to the day, and I'm glad to be here chatting with you. But no, you're not coming to the wedding. It's going to be a small and intimate affair. That's why. No fanfare. No fanfare. Let's get to your Farwell Show 5 here on the show for this Monday morning. We still do this, right? This Farwell 5 thing. All right. Number 1, regional police investigating after gunshots were reported early this morning in Cambridge. Calls came in around 3:30 from the Blair and Park Hill Roads area. Police responded to find a home that had been hit by bullets, but no one was in the home at the time. Investigators would like to hear from any witnesses. Number 2, a third person has been charged in connection to a series of thefts from vehicles in Waterloo's Northdale neighborhood. The investigation began last Friday with a third suspect arrested yesterday. A 30-year-old man is facing multiple charges and is being held for a bail hearing. Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, Premier Doug Ford will speak today at a meeting of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, or AMO. A number of councillors from our region are at the conference, where transportation, community safety, and mental health and addiction supports are all on the agenda. Regional Chair Karen Redmond says dedicated funding for all municipalities is needed to meet the housing crisis. Number 4, Premier Ford also joining a push to encourage Prime Minister Mark Carney to lower taxes in a bid to stimulate the economy. Ford says Canada needs to do what it can to create an environment that will attract businesses and encourage growth in the face of U.S. tariffs. A federal government official says Carney and Ford are also expected to talk about crime and housing. Ford has previously suggested that he wants to work with Carney to lower taxes on home purchases for 2 years. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning. Thousands of unionized Air Canada flight attendants expected to remain on the picket lines today as a battle against a federal return-to-work order continues. The federal government intervened in the dispute because of its impact on Canadians and the economy. Air Canada has said it would push back its plan to get flights back in the air until this evening, even though the union says employees will remain on strike until a fair contract is reached. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning, the 18th of August. I want to talk a little more about that Air Canada mess, though. I mean, who's having a bigger PR disaster, the airline or our Prime Minister? Your morning wake-up call coming up. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I know you know this, but I've been away for a little bit, so maybe I need the reminder as much as anyone. But the moment we begin our show together every day, our phone lines are open to hear from you. Conversations are a whole lot more fun when they are two-way. 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Join the conversation anytime. You are always welcome to share your voice here on the show. I wanted to dive into at least a little bit from my understanding or perspective so far when it comes to the Air Canada strike. And I'm going to get to the phones in just a moment. But this is some kind of mess, isn't it? And I admit to playing a little bit of catch up as I finished off my vacation last week. But my goodness, first and foremost, let's make something abundantly clear here. I know that particularly with a strike like this that is impacting, some 130,000 Canadians every day, and I'm sure we have all heard a horror story or two about the impact this is having on people who are traveling with Air Canada. They might be at one end of a round trip and can't get back. I read a story this morning about a couple from Italy on their honeymoon, stuck now at Pearson Airport, having come from the East Coast to transfer through Toronto to get out west to continue seeing this beautiful country as part of their honeymoon. And they can't get there because Air Canada is now grounded. Those sorts of frustrations can lead to the idea, and I get it. It's understandable that you should be lucky you have a job and you shouldn't be impacting people like this, and take the money that you're getting and be thankful for it, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let's not forget for one hot second here that collective bargaining is a right enshrined in union legislation in this country. It's something that you not only can but should exercise. And as tempting as it can be to utter those "you should just be happy you have a job" kind of phrases, this is very well within the rights of the union membership. By that same token, I would submit to you that the suggestions on the part of the union that wages have not kept pace with inflation over the length of the last contract, well, guess what? You signed that contract in 2015 and at the time thought it was a big win. It's kind of like a mortgage, isn't it? Are you going fixed rate or variable? You locked in to a deal for 10 years, a deal that you thought was a very good deal. And now all of a sudden it looks less good. And so here we are. The issue of whether or not you are paid while on the ground, which is an airline industry practice, I think is a very important one to push for. Of course you should be paid, right? And as we understand from the Air Canada side of things right now, that issue is being addressed in this next contract offer, along with 17% salary increases. So we're at a stalemate for sure. There's no question about that. But let's not forget that collective bargaining is enshrined as a right in labor legislation, as it should be. A couple of things, though, really strike me in this when it comes to the PR war, if you will. I don't think Air Canada was all that popular prior to this. I think it's getting less popular by the second when it comes to the impact on the travelers that I already alluded to. And something else that I think we really need to address, not just specific to Air Canada, but with air travel generally in this country. We know that we pay higher fares for flights in this country than many other parts of the world. Obviously, we are a vast expanse of land. But what's interesting is that airlines in Canada are protected against any compensation for passengers who get left stranded in situations like this, because we, in our airline regulations here in Canada, treat this like a bad weather event, something that's out of the control of the airline. I don't know. I think labor negotiations and keeping one's employees happy is a core principle of a good business. And if you do not do that and then the employees go on strike, I think the airlines could, if not should, be held accountable for that. And passengers should be compensated. They are in Europe, but we don't do it that way here. And I think that's something that we might want to address moving forward. That's on the Air Canada side of things. On the other side of the PR battle, how bad does this look for Prime Minister Mark Carney? He wasted no time, and I mean no time, in moving to push for binding arbitration and get employees back to work, an order that they are now in defiance of. But I'm just thinking about this from the Liberal government's point of view, and I'm wondering, where is today in this country the party for workers? The NDP is virtually non-existent at the federal level. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is going to likely win a by-election today. But the Liberals, with trying to force workers back to work, not allowing the collective bargaining process to play out, I don't know that screams you are a party of labor by any means. Perhaps with public sector unions, the Liberals would remain popular, but certainly when it comes to trades unions, this airline union, this CUPE local, for example, not going to be all that popular. And I think, given the defiance of the order from the federal government, Prime Minister Carney, who had an itchy trigger finger on this one, may have a little bit of PR egg on the old face. That's my perspective on this as we get back to our daily conversations together here on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Just ahead of our 9:30 update in the 570 News Center, let's go to the phones, hear from you on this Monday morning. Paul, good morning.
Good morning. You know, I was trying to think of some smart-ass comment to say, but I couldn't come up with anything suitable. So all I can say is congratulations. You both deserve it.
Wait a minute. Wait, just hang up. First of all, that's very kind of you, and you're letting your true colors show by that kindness. But you, Paul, you cannot come up with a smart-ass comment? Come on with your coming on.
I thought about it. I thought about this and, thought about that, saying how, trying to decide who's winning and who is losing, but I think you're both going to win. But, hey, let me throw this in. As far as the Air Canada flight attendants go,
yeah,
keep in mind that before I retired, they had to deal with people like me.
So you are saying that you're definitely on the flight attendant side?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Putting up with me.
Paul, it's good to hear from you as always.
You have a great day.
You too, my friend. You too. See, Paul's true colors showing through there. A smart-ass comment? No, he just led with kindness this morning. Every once in a while, he'll surprise you. And yes, as curmudgeonly and cranky as Paul can sometimes be, he was also aboard many an Air Canada flight before his retirement. And so the flight attendants had to put up with him. Look, I support the right to collectively bargain. If I was one of those passengers impacted, of course, and I don't like strikes generally, but This is how it works. So let's allow it to play out. Francis, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, sir. And how are you today?
I am top shelf, thank you. How are you?
Very good. I got some great news for you. Today was the day for my wife, Sherry, and myself, 53 years ago.
Congratulations.
And congratulations to you, my friend.
Yeah.
You got a long ways to catch up to us.
Yes, I do, Sherry, I do. But I'm going to do my best.
Fran has a song for you.
Okay.
Well, at our wedding, our favorite song was Please Release Me. and now, 53 years later, by Anne Murray, could I have this dance for the rest of my life?
Perfect. I love it. So you don't want to be released, do you?
Well, no, she won't release me.
I know when I got a good thing.
Atta girl, Sherry. Atta girl. Thank you both. God bless. Appreciate the call. If I can live to be 107, I'll catch up to your 53 years of wedded bliss. All right. I'm going to get you to the 570 News Center for that update I mentioned a moment ago. And then it's a big day for Pierre Poilievre, but the Conservative Party leader isn't nervous at all in this by-election, right? He's a surefire winner. We'll talk about it coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio. In case you didn't know, there is a by-election happening today in Battle River-Crowfoot, Alberta. And the leader of the Federal Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, is one of more than 200 names on the ballot. Peter Wollstonecroft is a retired professor of political science from the University of Waterloo. Joins us for a chat about today's by-election. Peter, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
I know there are many angles to discuss in this story, and we'll get to the importance, I think, of not just the win for Poilievre, which we expect, but the margin of that victory and what that means. But before we get to that, I admit to feeling as though this whole process is a wee bit distasteful. And I understand the system allows for it, but goodness gracious, just a few months ago, we had a general election, and the voters in the Ottawa area where Pierre Poilievre had been the MP for 20 plus years said, no, we don't want you back as our MP. So he just goes out to a real safe seat in Alberta and competes in a by-election? What? This isn't okay, is it?
Well, history says that it is because it's happened many a time. And it's a long list of party leaders who have been defeated and then found salvation somewhere else and been successful. So it has happened. I don't know if we want to have a rule that says you can't run in a situation like we have today. So, yeah, I'd distasteful. I can see. I take your point. It's a lot of money. This is his salvation, as I said. But you know what? You'd have a lot of fun, Mike, drawing up a law that would prohibit such behavior.
Okay, I'm going to go to work on that anyway, and I'll check back with you as I draft a few versions of it.
Give me your draft.
Okay, and you'll help me along the way, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's what we're here for.
Okay. The long ballot. I also mentioned more than 200 names on this, and I understand what the longest ballot group is trying to do. They're pushing for electoral reform. I'm not certain this is the way to go about that, is it?
Not to my mind. I think it's a goofy way. Because it makes the point that the opponents of PR make, and I don't make this argument, but they do, which is that you have too many parties. So you have a ballot with 214 names on it. It's obviously a problem. And Elections Canada will do something about it. And it will be very easy. They'll say you can only be official agent for one candidate, and you can only nominate one candidate in a constituency. And you may say you can only have one finance officer for one candidate. So every candidate would have their own finance officer. Well, that will make it very burdensome on the long ballot people. But it's an annoyance, and Elections Canada has had to do something which surprises me, which is to say you can write in the name, and the question is what kind of misspellings will they tolerate? Not everybody can spell properly Pierre Poilievre's last name?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I think if we get close and the two P's are there, it will likely benefit Mr. Poilievre. But it's an interesting workaround from Elections Canada, to be sure.
Yeah, they'll look for the voters' intent, but you can get some. If you got very, very close, they would say, "Well, how about why did you say yes and no to that?" and that kind of stuff. We try to avoid that.
So to get to the heart of the matter in today's by-election, Peter, I think it's virtually a foregone conclusion here that Mr. Poilievre will win the seat. The question becomes by how much and what that means to his political future, or at least the future of him as leader of the Conservative Party.
Yep, that's what it's all about. Otherwise, this is a non-event.
So what number do you think he needs to achieve in order to maintain the confidence of his party members?
Well, the standard rule that people talk about is you need 2/3. Now, where does that rule come from? Well, Joe Clark lost the leadership review with 2/3 of the vote, so that's the line. As Prince Charles at the time said, isn't 2/3 enough? Well, it wasn't for Joe, because he said we're going to have a leadership contest. So as far as the party is concerned, and I'm not a party member, so I can't say, but I would think that anything in the 60s is a problem. If it's in the 50s, that's almost a disaster. So I suspect it'll be in the 70s. But if it gets into the 60s, it becomes a problem. And the party has a leadership review convention in January. And so if there's any kind of negativity about the result, that's what will be manifested, and Poilievre will have to address it. And underlying all of this is that the party across the country will be thinking, okay, he was popular, but no, even when he was popular, there was a lot of negativity. And then when we had the election, the party did not win when it was looked like they were going to, and he lost his own seat. So what does this say about Pierre Poilievre as a future party leader? Can we really entrust our future to this guy? So that's the question that will be there. If it's in the 60s, it will be a bit of a dogfight in Calgary in January.
Speaking of the future, and I know I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but assuming that Pierre Poilievre wins today and taking at his word Damien Carrick, who had won the seat handily in the general election a few months ago, who has said he's going to run in Battle River-Crowfoot in the next general election, do you think Pierre Poilievre will go back and run in Carleton?
Well, good question. He's going to run somewhere, and he probably somewhere in Eastern Ontario. And the reason why is you want to have your constituency close to where you spend most of your time. So that's Eastern Ontario. Now, the big question for me is, coming kind of out of your question, is, well, what kind of personal support does Pierre have in Carleton? He lost a riding which he'd been representing for 20 years. You would have thought that he would have built up a personal support base in that period and a body of committed workers, supporters, that were doing everything they could to keep him aware of what was happening and making sure that he got reelected. A leader shouldn't have to worry about what's happening in the home country, as it were. So I don't know if he'd be welcome in Carleton. The nice thing about Carleton is close to Ottawa, so he can quote unquote represent it. But he neglected the constituency. So where would he go? A good question. He won't run in Battle River-Crowfoot next time. That I'm certain of. So yeah, so he's going to win. And then he'll be measured by his performance in the fall. Let's assume he gets chosen again or reaffirmed as leader. Then he can go prepare for the next election. And good luck finding a place to run.
I'm looking forward to that because I think it will be interesting. One final note, Peter, before I let you go, and that is for Prime Minister Carney. I mean, should we give him a little pat on the back here or nod of approval because he allowed this process to play out as quickly as it has. I mean, Andrew Scheer had to kind of stand in for a very brief spring sitting in the House of Commons, but all things being equal, and with the win today, Pierre Poilievre will be back in his usual spot as opposition leader for the fall sitting.
Yeah, well, I give Prime Minister Carney credit because he could have done the cheap stuff, which was not hold the by-election until next year sometime, and that would have made life very difficult for the Conservatives. So Carney did the honourable thing, the non-partisan thing. He wasn't playing cheap partisan games. So he said, well, if there's a by-election to be, I'll call it as soon as I can, and then we'll see who wins and who loses. So all credit to Carney on that front.
As always, Peter, appreciate your time, and watch for those drafts of my new law coming into your inbox, okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Peter.
All righty.
Peter Wollstonecroft is a retired professor of political science at the University of Waterloo. Joins us to talk about what I think we all agree is a foregone conclusion. Pierre Poilievre will win this by-election today. The big question, the only drama, is by what margin of victory? I'm fairly confident when I say that it has never been won, Battle River-Crowfoot, by less than 70%. So if you go below that, boy, oh boy, I think there will be some questions asked. I also confess, and look, I love a good by-election. I want by-elections all the time. I want voters to have the option, the opportunity to put their own representative into office. That's the way it should work. I don't love by-elections like this. I think this is a little bit of gaming the system. Oh, I didn't win over here, so I'll just go to the place where it's safe to win. And you know as well as I do that Damien Kirk, he is getting some kind of soft landing, isn't he? Some way, somehow, he's being very well looked after by the Conservative Party. And I don't know. The voters already spoke, Mr. Poilievre. And I would say this if it was the leader of another party. The voters spoke. You lost. I don't know that I love the rule that allows you to just go to another place where you think it's an easier bet to win. But that's just me. I always like to hear from you. So your thoughts on today's by-election and the system that allows for it are always welcome here on the Mike Farwell Show. Give me a call. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Even when he was popular, there was a lot of negativity. And then when we had the election, the party did not win when it was looked like they were going to, and he lost his own seat. So what does this say about Pierre Poilievre as a future party leader? Can we really entrust our future to this guy? So that's the question that will be there. It was in the 60s. It will be a bit of a dogfight in Calgary in January.
That's where the leadership review will happen for the federal Conservative Party and whether or not Pierre Poilievre remains as leader. One question, after we see the margin of victory today, we're sure it's going to be a victory. Another question would be, where does he run next time? Because it ain't going to be in Battle River-Crowfoot where he's competing in the by-election today. But I've said my piece. Now I want to hear yours. Let's go to the phones. Lisa, good morning.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. You're talking about gaming the system by running in another area. I kind of feel like that both of these elections being allowed to have over 200 candidates, and some of which, pardon the expression, some of that seems a little bit cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs that's allowed to happen. I mean, if it was a fair way of doing that, there would have been over 200 candidates in Carney's riding too, not just Poilievre's or in all of the ridings. So that seems a little bit like that group has been allowed to game the system as well. Just my 2 cents worth. I don't know. That just seems like there's, you talk about electoral reform. That's just basically saying anyone who's got $100 or whatever can run, doesn't matter. We definitely need electoral reform, but that's not the way to get it. So that's just my opinion.
Lisa, I appreciate it. I will always pardon the cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs vernacular if you wish to use it. And look, I don't disagree that the longest ballot committee here is misguided, to say the very least. I'm not sure that really contributed to Poilievre's loss in Carleton, but I guess we will never know for sure. Ian, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Mike. I hope you had a good vacation. Speaking of gaming the system, if we're going to do this, then I think the Leafs should reach out to Florida Panthers and ask for a rematch for the Stanley Cup, because to me, it's the same thing. You lost. And with Poilievre losing in Carleton, you lost. You're out. And it shouldn't be allowed that you go to some other place, tail between the legs, and, oh, please let me do this again. I'll, do whatever. It's a gaming of the system for sure, and it's a real mockery of Canadian democracy. What does it say when you've been pushed out from Carleton, and yet you're going to go here? I think also the 200 candidates on the ballot, I don't agree with that either. There's only so many political parties, and every other political party you hear about, the Communist Party, etc., blah, blah, blah. But, let's talk about the actual parties that are in our parliament, and I think there needs to be a limit on some of this stuff as well. You need to have some sort of change in that as well. But I think with Poilievre, it's like he's been a career politician. He's a chest pounder, as far as I'm concerned. I find half the time, even this weekend, some of the rhetoric that I heard him spewing out is just falsities. And I'm tired of this type of stuff within Canadian politics and our democracy. We are not the U.S. that allowed Trump to do the exact same thing, and I think we are much better than that. Whether you like Mark Carney, I think he's been a lot more upfront about things, and I kind of wish Carney would have, if he had an ability to say no, that we can't allow this to happen.
All righty, and I appreciate that. Mark Carney certainly could have made Pierre Poilievre wait longer, but I think he was fairly nonpartisan in his allowance for this by-election to happen as quickly as it has. Let's squeeze in one more before the break. Rory, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Mike. How you doing, sir?
Good, thank you.
Good. Welcome back, and congrats on making things officially official with your beloved.
Thank you very much.
That's great news. Mike, one of my main guiding principles when it comes to running, not that I've ever ran before, but I've always been of the belief that, you should run in, the area that you live in. Nobody knows the area that you live in better than the people that live in it and work in it and play in it, volunteer in it, etc. Never been one to see a parachuting candidate as being the secret sauce. And so really, the fact that he lost and is doing this now again, parachuting himself into a riding, just makes it really unfair to the voters, to Canadians, to the people of Battle River-Crowfoot as well, who elected an MP, before going into this session. So that being said, I still think he's going to win. And, people can argue what the margin is going to be and whether that means anything. I don't think it means all that much. I think the real question moving forward is, and I think some of the callers have mentioned it as well, is what's the strategy going to be now? Is it going to be the same old because he considers the last election that he probably should have won, and if it wasn't for Jagmeet Singh and a disastrous NDP, that he would have formed a majority? The NDP had to go to the Liberals and basically save a right-wing government? Or is he going to come with ideas, new ideas, fresh ideas, and a different perspective for Canadians? And that's what I kind of hope is the conversation moving forward.
All right, Rory. I'm sorry I got to cut you there, but understand, because we got to get to a news update. But interesting point. Will there be a change in approach from the Conservative leader, who is almost certainly going to win today, and then will be back in that role as the leader of the official opposition in the House of Commons in about a month's time? This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. If you didn't get to weigh in on the by-election now, our phone lines were busy. Put a pin in it. Remember, our Talkback Hour, rant or rave from noon until 1 today. Would love to hear from you then on the by-election or whatever else happens to be on your mind between noon and 1 today. Right now, I've got to get you to the 570 News Center for an update, and then our region's newest councillor, appointed from a slate of 44 candidates by regional council last week, Joe Gowing, joins us in studio next on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio.
This is where today's topics turn into today's talking points. It's local and it's Democratic radio at its finest. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio.
Again, colleagues, we have no majority. I will turn the floor over to the clerk.
Thank you, Chair. I will read out the votes again. And as I outlined, we will have a draw at this point. So Fawzia Mazar has received 3 votes. Carrie Wright has received 3 votes. Maggie Lamb has received 3 votes. And Joseph Gowing has received 6 votes. So, Council, as I outlined, at this point we cannot drop the candidates that all have the fewest votes because we would only be left with 1 candidate left, and that candidate doesn't have a majority. So, Mr. Ferresso is now putting the 3 names into the orange box, and we will draw 1 name to be removed from the next round. So, Fawzia Mazar, Carrie Wright, and Maggie Lamb, 1 will be drawn to be removed from the next round of voting. So, Council, Carrie Wright will be removed from the next round of voting. Proceeding then is Fawzia Mazar, Maggie Lamb, and Joseph Gowing.
The Mike Farwell Show continues
on 570 News Radio.
And following that last round of voting, it was Joseph Gowing who was declared the newest regional councillor. That happened at a meeting last Thursday, as you heard right there. The process played out whereby there was a 3-way tie for second, if you will. Joseph Gowing had 6 votes to 3 each for Fawzia Mazar, Maggie Lamb, and Carrie Wright. The draw to remove Carrie Wright, she was voted off the island in that draw, and then it became a 3-way vote between Fawzia, Maggie, and Joe got the requisite 8 votes, the majority he needed to be declared our newest regional councillor. And Joe Gowing now sits across from me in the studio to talk about his victory. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Mike.
How did that feel for you? You were one of 44 people to present to council last Thursday, and it comes down to voting like that. What was going through your mind?
Just hearing that back gave me shivers, too, because that's what it was like. It was it was amazing feeling. Listening to all those people with all their great and different backgrounds. Like I said at the end there that any one of them would have done a great job, whoever the council decided to support. But in the end, it just didn't feel real when they said I was the one that won. And I was like, are you sure?
Is there going to be a recount? What did you think of the process when you obviously would have given consideration to putting your hat into the ring when the region put out the call for applications? But one of 44, Joe, that's no small field.
Well, and they kept it a secret right to the end. So I found out when everyone else did that there was 43 others on top of myself. It was a lot to take in. How do you differentiate yourself from 43 other people? And unfortunately, there's a by-election going through with 214. I couldn't imagine doing that, but 44 really great candidates to choose from. It was just trying to, okay, what can I bring that they can't? And that's while I was sitting there. Luckily, I was the second last for me. Luckily, was the second last to speak because I was able to hear all the perspectives and I was able to pivot a little bit in my speech, remove some stuff, put some stuff in, because overall, I believe what it came down to was who is going to be able to look at the region as a whole, who knows the region as a whole, and with my experiences in the previous political side of things, I know the townships. I'm born and raised in Cambridge. I've lived in Kitchener, Forest Heights area for 15 years now. So I think I'm pretty diverse in knowing what's happening and keeping a pulse on it. But yeah, I think that's one of the things. It was a different experience when it comes to this. Yeah.
How do you feel you were able to differentiate yourself from those 43 other hopefuls?
I think it was just that, focusing on what I've done, what my experiences have been, and it's true. I've walked and knocked on doors in Wellesley. I've walked and knocked on doors in Woolwich. Same thing in Wilmot and the Kitchener side of things. Even in Cambridge, I was a trustee at a young age of 23, knocking on doors in Cambridge. So I'm I'm pretty used to it. But also just the listening side, like even with when you're at the Legion, there's a lot of people that like to tell stories. So listening has been a huge thing for me. And just listening to what people have to say and acknowledging that their issue isn't small. To them, it is a big thing. So I think I bring that, and I look forward to continuing that work. Yeah.
I love that Legion in Preston. And it's a great example of the stories that you'll hear, the listening you'll be able to do, and that experience you allude to, Joe, in Cambridge as a trustee, still working there with the Legion. When you were knocking on those doors in the townships, it would have been during the last provincial election, which we'll get to. But it goes to show, and it reminds us, this is not your first time around. Why did you decide to throw in your hat to this particular ring?
Well, I think I really want to make a difference. Seeing the opening, and I know I didn't know Carrie Williams personally, but we have to acknowledge why this came about with her passing in April. She has big shoes to fill. And I think looking at where she was when it came to policies and things, I think I can fit into those shoes. I don't know if I could walk a mile in them, but I think what I bring is pretty close to what they've been missing since April.
Okay. We're a little bit like on this show what you were dealing with last Thursday at council. There's a time limit before I have to take a commercial break. Sure. So I'm up against that, but I want to continue this conversation.
Absolutely.
Sure. Thank you. Joe Gowing is in studio with us. He is your newest regional councillor. So what the heck is he going to do for you as a regional councillor? And what did that experience running provincially do for him now running municipally? The conversation continues with our new regional councillor, Joe Gowing, on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. We are in studio this morning with Joe Gowing. He is your newest regional councillor, being appointed to the role from a slate of 44 candidates at a meeting of regional council last week. I've shared this story before, Joe, at a time many years ago when I was being courted to run for office. And somebody who I respect a great deal said to me, and who has been in office before, said there are two important considerations or things to think about. One is what happens if you lose, which I had thought about because it terrified me, the idea of putting yourself forward and then not winning. And then the question, though, that she said I should consider that really caught me was, what happens if you win? Right. And I hadn't really thought about that. So you just won. Now what?
Now there's a big learning curve for sure. As you joked about when I walked in, there is a stack of papers that I've been going through.
I'm sure there has been.
And it's interesting, the saying from when I went to council on Friday to sign everything and whatnot was, okay, we're going to water you with a garden hose. So you're going to drink from, a fire hose. So that's kind of what I've been doing in the last little bit. But getting my bearings is first. But really, I want to look at where I can fit in and where my experiences and knowledge can help out the region. And that's kind of where I'm looking at. So my background is in finance. That's kind of what I'm looking to do, is possibly help out in any way, shape, or form on either budgeting or finance side. But housing is a big thing. And you mentioned it before that I ran provincially. One of the things that I've said was that we need to build the right type of housing. And that's kind of where I'm going to be pushing that side. And that agenda is, okay, no more massive homes that nobody can afford. We need to look at different ways of building. And that's working with the provincial and federal side to make sure that can happen. Yeah. On the front of you having run provincially, and I will just share this here on the show as I shared on social media upon your election to regional council. I think you got hosed in the provincial election because there were some shenanigans going on, in my opinion. But one way or the other, I felt as though that was a somewhat unsavory process. Why did it not turn you off of politics? Because here you are today. A sucker for pain. I don't. No, and it comes back to, and I said this in my speech at council, it comes back to what my grandfather told me years ago when he brought me into Air Cadets and learning the leadership side and the leadership style of things. He said to me that you cannot ask someone to do something you would not expect yourself, or you wouldn't do yourself. So yeah, there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be, and I've had them. I have definitely had them. But I think those experiences humbled me and kept me grounded. Winning is great, but you learn more when you don't win. I'm not going to use the L word because that's not the way it goes.
Fair.
But when you don't win, that's when the learning happens. And that's kind of what I'm taking from that. So I didn't win the provincial election. That it is what it is. I know that I can make a difference here. And as soon as I saw the opportunity come up, I knew this is one that I wanted to get into.
Still on the provincial side, when you ran as a member of the Liberal Party, you were sharply critical of the land assembly in Wilmot Township, questioning in particular the jobs numbers associated with it. That file, if you will, lands almost squarely on your desk now as a regional councillor. How do you approach it?
Well, finding out what I didn't know before. I don't know what regional council knows. I don't know what the process has been. So I'm now going to be privy to that information. I know there's the NDAs and all that jazz that went through, but I'm going to be able to talk to my peers now and have those conversations on how did we end up here. The criticism really came from me to the provincial government, because from what everyone, and again, I haven't talked to anybody on council, so I don't know the details of the whole thing, but what I was given was what the news is saying and what our MPP was saying at the time, that it's going to create 30,000 jobs, but they didn't know who was coming. So it's yes, I was a critic of it. I was critic of the process. Wasn't transparent. There was no public consultation. So those are really key things to look at, and I will talk about going forward with my colleagues on council, is how can we make this process easier and more transparent? What I'm really, really concerned about is the government putting NDAs on council and basically shutting them up. And when I say that, it's the provincial side of things that this came from. But it's me getting in there, finding out what's happening and see where I can help basically mediate between, because like I said, I've talked to all the residents there. I've went to meetings, I went to rallies. So I know their concerns, and if it has to be behind closed doors, I am going to voice those opinions and those concerns to my fellow councillors and say, when we make a decision, it's a regional decision. Regardless of that being in Wilmot, it will impact the region as a whole.
We are about 14 months away from another municipal election in October of 2026. So you will have 14 months in the role. Do you intend on running again and making this more permanent?
I do. And a lot of people criticize the process that the government, that the council took to appoint someone. And for me, I'm totally, if we can go with a by-election, let's do it. But you're right, that's a short time frame. Going to a by-election would have cost millions of dollars, whatever that figure is. There's all people throwing different ones around. But let's call a spade a spade. We elected them to make major decisions for us. And this is one of those decisions that me personally, and not just because I won, I said this before I put my name in, that it's a short time frame. Let's appoint someone. Let's get it going. But I said it at the ending of my talk to council. If I'm elected or selected or appointed, I should say, to this council, I'm going to put my name on the ballot and show people in the next 14 months that they made a good decision. And I'm going to let them decide in 14 months that if they want to keep me. So that's the job process, and that's what I'm going to go through. I'm definitely going to be on the ballot for sure.
It's like being in your probationary period.
That's right.
Look
That's
forward
right.
to it.
Yeah.
14-month job interview for Joe Gowing. Thank you for making time for us today. Let's not be strangers, and we'll continue these conversations.
You got it, Mike.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Joe Gowing, our newest regional councillor, joins us this morning on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Couple of things to touch on here before our update from the 570 News Center at 10:30. Following that conversation with our newest regional councillor, Joe Gowing. I've known Joe for quite some time, and I'm quite pleased for him. I think he will make an excellent councillor. And one of the reasons I'm pleased for him is because of what I alluded to during the conversation with him. When he ran provincially earlier this year for the Liberals, he got screwed. There were some shenanigans going on between the NDP and the Greens. The Green candidate dropped out, said the only way we can win this, the only chance we have in this riding is to throw your support behind the NDP. And if nothing else, I don't think Joe Gowing as the Liberal candidate got a fair shake. It wasn't a fair race at that point. So that makes me even more pleased for somebody that I've known for a length of time for his appointment to council. But as you have heard me say on numerous occasions, I am against the appointment, period. Not that it's Joe. It could be Joe Blow, not Joe Gowing. But I think that by-elections are paramount. We have a right in this country. It's not just a privilege. It's a right to cast our ballots and decide who it is that will represent us on a municipal council. And yes, you can make the argument that we elected these other 15 people and they can make the choice now because we elected them to do that. But they don't get to choose who gets into their club. We do. We decide the voice that we want to represent us within that club. And you heard Joe allude to the cost of by-elections. Well, I'm ready for the accounting, please. I really am, because I think these numbers we throw around as to the cost of a by-election need to be scrutinized. How do we get to $750,000 or $800,000 for a by-election when about 10 years ago we were quoting costs around $150,000? That's some kind of election inflation, if you will. And, you know, when you were a kid, or maybe even as an adult, and you got into trouble, you always had an excuse, right? Well, yeah, I did that, but, and then you have the list of reasons why you did what you did. That's all I keep hearing from councils or school boards when they make appointments like this. Well, the by-election's this expensive, and the next election is only this far away. By the way, Ottawa, Windsor, Hamilton, all holding by-elections a year and a bit away from the next municipal election. Those cities can do it. We should have done that too. You can excuse make until the cows come home, but you're still making the undemocratic choice here. You've chosen the undemocratic path, and I'm not okay with it. And at some point, we got to stop this. But that said, congratulations to a good guy, Joe Gowing, your newest regional councillor. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio. Friday, this past, the 15th of August, marked 80 years since the Empire of Japan surrendered to the Allies, also known as Victory over Japan Day, the 80th anniversary this past Friday. And on this Monday morning, we are joined in studio by Angela Reid, who's the granddaughter of a Japanese prisoner of war all those decades ago. Angela, it's great to see you. Good morning.
Thank you, Mike, for having me on again. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, yes. Because the story of your grandfather is so compelling, and we will get into that and how you continue to honor his memory. But what does VJ Day, Victory over Japan Day, mean to you?
Well, I think because 80 years have gone by, and I mentioned this before about there's not many of these POWs left, these soldiers left, and their stories are obviously dying with them. And what they went through was so horrendous. And I think to celebrate that victory of when their prison camps were liberated is so important, because it just wasn't a liberation of the camps, it was their whole life fighting for the rest of their lives, for pensions and to stay healthy. So, and I think as each year goes by, it's important to remember that. So I just think it really honors the soldiers to keep those stories alive and to remember them because, they fought for our freedoms.
What do you know of your grandfather, Nick Massaro's story?
Okay. Well, the last time I was on, I brought his tapestry in. And the story about the tapestry keeps growing a bit. When I was doing my research on my novel, it was in his information that a lot of them had died in the POW camp. Well, with new research that I've been in contact with the War Museum in Scotland, in Edinburgh, Scotland, some of those names were actually men who died in this battle in Hong Kong as well. So his tapestry not only represents the POWs who died, but some of those men who died on the battalion. So that even makes the story even better. So what I've done today was I actually brought a court proceeding, and this is the U.S. versus the accused warrant officer in the camp that my grandfather was in. And there was about 200 soldiers that were kept captive at this Amagasky branch camp. And out of those 200, 28 of those died. And I don't know, the names on my tapestry on which deaths were in this report, because my novel that I wrote was obviously I took a lot of, creative liberties with it. But here's some truths that I thought I'd share with a couple of incidences on what those POWs went through during that time. And these are actually incidents that have been marked down through that court case. One incident was the unlawful mistreatment and torture of a British POW by beating him, by repeatedly dipping him in cold water over a period of 3 days. That was known as the water treatment. And my grandfather did talk to me about that. It was just horrendous to think that that's what that POW had to suffer through. Another incident was of a British POW being beaten with the guard using his fist, stick, and a belt buckle. Now, these weren't sticks that we just picked up in our backyard. They used bamboo poles, and they created quite a smack and did a lot of damage because most of these POWs were at skeletal forms at that time. So any kind of abuse just added, further to their sickness. Another incident was where the Japanese camp guards would force the prisoners to kneel on the bamboo poles with another bamboo pole behind their knees, and they would put pails of water and would make them stand or sit in that position for hours. And that was known as the bamboo treatment. And my grandfather did experience that. I don't know how many times, but he did talk about having that done to him as well. So it's very, very awful to think that, this is kind of what they did on pretty much a daily basis and at the time of imprisonment. Now, this story really bothered me. Not that any of them didn't bother me, but this one about this particular POW was very sad. He arrived in the camp of December 1943 until December 1944 when he died. Now, a lot of the prisoners were sent in intervals over from Hong Kong to Japan on the hell ships. So they were, like I said, they were sent in intervals. So this POW was sent over in 1943. He was required by the Japanese and known to the Japanese medical officer of the camp to do such work as sifting cinders and scaling the inside of iron castings with a wire brush. The Japanese required him to work until November 1944, when his condition became such that a fellow worker had to assist him around. The Japanese beat him because he stood out and opposed many of the matters that the Japanese were trying to inflict on him. The Japanese medical orderly stood by his bedside and laughed at him when he was dying. The rations at the camp hospital were inadequate, and at the same time, there was adequate medical supplies in the camps that were never used. This British POW died of starvation on December the 13th, 1944. Other incidents were when they were in the Otani steel factory, which they hauled pig iron. Now, my grandfather talked about that, and they would made to haul pig iron like for 14, 16 hours a day, and they had to put them in vats to melt them down, and the factory was horrendous heat that they had to work in. So they're doing this through starvation and beatings throughout the day working in this factory. When they were too sick to work, they were made to work out in the rice paddy fields, and that was up to mud, knee deep. Weren't allowed to wear shoes, so a lot of the men ended up getting horrible infected feet. And there is one incident here where it says that the prisoners used on the detail in the rice paddy fields suffered from malaria, beriberi, and badly infected feet. And they were required, like I said, to work without shoes. And when this was brought up to the guards at the prison, they just laughed at the prisoners. So obviously, there was no care there. They just wanted to work them for their warfare. And if they died, well, they died. It was recorded that 200 prisoners were quartered in an old warehouse in which each man had a space of 3 feet for living and to keep his belongings in. The building was infested with lice, fleas, and rats. The mats issued for the use of the men to be disposed of on account of the lice and fleas had to be taken away, and the men had to sleep on the floor because of the lice and the fleas and mosquitoes. Plus, the roof in that building had leaked. Now, this is where my grandfather made his tapestry, was in this warehouse that they talk about in this court case, and this is where he hid it the whole time of his imprisonment.
In just that 3 feet of space.
Yeah.
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 We're in conversation this morning with Angela Reid. Her grandfather was a Japanese prisoner of war. Friday, this past, the 15th of August, marked 80 years since the surrender of Japan to the Allies, VJ Day. We continue our conversation on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Angela Reid's grandfather from Kitchener was a Japanese prisoner of war. And today we remember Nick Massaro and recognize VJ Day, Victory Over Japan Day, which was the 15th of August, this past Friday. Angela, you were talking about, through your research and learning more from your grandfather's stories and then the research that followed, the sorts of things that these prisoners of war had to endure. What have you learned about your grandfather's experiences?
Well, I think the important part after all of that abuse and torture was what he had to endure afterwards. And that was all the Far East POWs getting together to fight for a pension. And it was quite sad because they're having now to prove all over again what they went through. And some of the things that I read from that article and other articles that my grandfather had been in as well about that abuse, to me it was so disgusting that they had to actually fight for a pension. And I brought this is my grandfather's medical assessment, and as you can see, it's pages. And it starts from the time of his liberation of September 1945. And I just wanted to read a couple of pieces that my grandfather actually was recorded in this saying, and this, again, fighting for his pension. The first dated was in 1966, and my grandfather's recorded as saying, "At the fall of Hong Kong, I was 5 feet 3 inches and weighed 140 pounds. On Liberation Day, I was 5 feet and 2.5 inches and weighed 78 pounds. I suffered from beriberi, pellagra, dysentery, electric feet. On returning home, I was ill with jaundice, shingles, and pleurisy. I could date down a dozen more. The FEPOW, an organization for the Far East prisoner of war, were fighting for pensions for all of us, but I came to Canada in 1954 and heard no more. I carry no insurance. Premiums are far too high when they hear of my past history. Reason for not answering sooner, I was waiting for information from home." So what he's doing throughout this whole time from 1945 into 1989 he was fighting is it was back and forth between the medical institution here in Canada that they were sending this information back to Britain for him to get his pension. So it's back and forth, and it's quite a lot of information, so I won't read a lot of it, but I'll just give you a couple of incidences where my grandfather wrote. So now we're up to 1970, and he's still appealing for this pension. And he states on record, "My neck has been injured by several mock beheadings that the Japanese did." So what they would do to frighten the POWs or put them into submission is they would have them lay on the ground, kneel on the ground, and one Japanese soldier would have his sword out and so the POW could see the blade, and another one behind would have the scabbard on the blade, and the one with the actual sword would bring it down, and the other one would take the sword with the scabbard and hit them on the back of the head. So in their mind, that POW thought they were being beheaded. Now, some were actually beheaded because their heads were actually put on poles around the campground to deter the prisoners from escaping. So in this medical assessment, my grandfather's trying to let them know these are the ailments he now has. And as he's getting older, it's becoming worse. This part that my grandfather recorded really grabs my heart. He said, "Physically, I am in poor shape, and a good night's sleep is a dream away." And it just really hit my heart that, here's a man that fought and was imprisoned, and he has to prove each ailment, each torture to get a pension. So it was pretty sad, actually, for us and as being his family. So he never did receive that full pension. And I think the last time I was on your show, I'd mentioned that the Ministry of Defence did give a debt of honour of £10,000. This is the British Ministry of Defence. But my grandfather had already passed away in 1995, and that the Ministry of Defence announced that it was in 2000. So he was 5 years short. So he never got that either. So that's why it's so important that I, keep talking about his story, because it's, a pretty sad one, that all the fighting that he had to do.
How did you come to be in possession of his tapestry? Okay,
so the tapestry has its own history, as, I told you before about this. He had lost it, actually, in 1954 when he immigrated. Comes to Canada, and he starts to get his life on track. So in 1991, he had a captain of the Royal Scots put an advert in the Thistle, and I brought the Thistle here. It is what that magazine looks like. And the article was called The Lost Souvenir. And if anybody came across it, they were to find it. Well, in August 1991, it was found, and they did write my grandfather, and they told him about it. And I'm just going to read the letter. This is a letter back and forth between my grandfather and the Captain Ford at the Royal Scots in Scotland. It says here that, this is my grandfather, "I shall be brief and to the point of what I said in my first letter. I appreciate what you and the NCO, non-commissioned officers, have done with the Roll of Honor. Thank you so much. I also ask a favor from you. Would you take a photo of the Roll of Honor and send it to me, please? One more thing. I received the newsletter from Captain Ford, Treasurer of the Royal Scots POW Association, who, by the way, tells me that the 1st Battalion and the 2nd Battalion are getting together for a little party in April. With a wee bit of luck, I could be there. I will keep my fingers crossed." Well, my grandfather was too ill, and he so wanted to go back to this because he wanted to see his tapestry one more time, because he knew he was dying. So,
and it contains the names of those that he fought with and lost.
In the POW camps.
Yeah.
These are the pictures that were sent to my grandfather. So this is what he saw after 37 years that were sent to him by the captain. And this is one of my cousins who's a Royal Scot. So that was the only thing that he saw of his tapestry at that point, was by the way of pictures.
I would strongly recommend you check out Angela's book, Roll of Honor, which is available at Wordsworth in Waterloo.
Yep. Actually, it's available in close to 30,000 stores online.
Fantastic.
Like Amazon, Indigo. There's a website right on my card there. A lot of independent stores won't carry it, but they can order it for you through Ingram.
All right. And it's abreedauthor.com. Angela Reed is the author, joining us in studio. Thanks for keeping these memories alive and sharing these stories with us today.
Thanks, Mike, for having me on and being able to give me the opportunity to share it.
This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Just ahead of our update in the 570 News Center, let's go to the phones. Fadi is with us. Good morning, Fadi.
Good morning, sir. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
I'm just calling regarding this tragedy of treating the POWs, and it's always not good to be a prisoner of another country. But these are lessons from the past of how prisoners should not be treated, that we look at, and imagine the cost of lives on the civilians, sometimes when there is. And to come in, as we started the segment saying we're celebrating, it's a tragic. It's not a celebration of 70,000 people, children and men and women dropping the bomb on them and killing. That's not a celebration. I hold big regards the torture, but we should learn from this torture from the past, not be complicit in it right now, and people worse happening to them, and come and speak out for horrific things that happen to us. We should be more responsible of how we handle our past and what the lessons we learn from it, and share that with the people so it's a lesson of what to do and not to do. Not belittling what everybody else does, us the victims, and do the exact same thing right now or be complicit in it. And go in the past wars, they torture our soldiers, so we're going to kill 150 or 250 of the civilian children and men and women.
I think...
So if you started with a celebration, it's not a celebration when we come kill kids and women and children.
I appreciate your point, and you're right. I didn't choose the right word at all. It is certainly a recognition of VJ Day, which was August the 15th, but celebration would have been the wrong choice of words. And Angela and I did even talk about that off the air. What we're seeing in the world today, I think these lessons from the past are very good reminders for us. Fadi, appreciate the participation in the show today. I'm going to get you an update from the 570 News Center, and then it's Monday. This week in music history, coming right up on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers.
They shot a movie once in my hometown. Everybody was in it for miles around. Out at the speedway, some kind of heavy thing. Well, I ain't no movie star, but I can get behind anything. Yeah, I can get behind anything.
Oh, I love me some Tragically Hip. And we will get to the Tragically Hip on This Week in Music History, along with a musical note from This Week in History. Well, it was kind of last week in history, but it's got a direct tie to this show every single day. All of that and more on This Week in Music History with our good friend and musicologist Brian Allison, who joins us for the segment. And don't forget to check out Brian's Facebook page of the same name, This Week in Music History, to keep up with all of these events that happened on This Week in Music History. Mr. Allison, good morning to you, sir.
Hi, Mike.
You know, we often talk about rock and roll and the kind of debauchery that goes on with rock and rollers, and we might think the Rolling Stones take the cake, but one day on This Week in Music History, Keith Moon said, "Hold my beer."
Yeah, he really did. This was a game changer, and it's gone down in music history as just one of those stories that's carried through for generations. So yeah, it was August 23rd, 1967. He was enjoying a very, very wild birthday party, and he ended up driving his Lincoln rental car into the Holiday Inn swimming pool. As the party had become out of control, the police were called to put an end to the festivities. Moon, who was, keen to avoid being detained by the police, snuck outside, got in this Lincoln Continental limousine, and attempted to make a getaway. Unfortunately, in his inebriated state, he realized that the handbrake, he released the handbrake, and the car rolled into the pool of the Holiday Inn, where it perched very nicely for photos and went front page pretty much globally. So everybody was aware of Moon the Loon, as they called him, driving his car into the pool of the Holiday Inn during a party. Rock and roll royalty. Absolutely. So you got the Rolling Stones on one hand, the Who on the other, and with Keith Moon, of course, and there, of course, are so many more stories of such shenanigans in rock and roll. But that's why we love it so gosh darn much. It's great. I mean, the stories this story is older than you and I, and still, people still talk about the day that Keith Moon drove his Lincoln Continental into the swimming pool. So it's obviously resonates.
It's a song that has resonated with sports fans, or had, I guess I should use past tense, because it was removed from playlists after Gary Glitter was accused of pedophilia, and it comes back to roost on this week in 2008, that story.
Yeah, one of the darker sort of underbellies of rock and roll in the Gary Glitter saga. So yeah, he is a convicted sexual offender and pedophile. And it was on August 21st, 2008, that he was attempting to return to Thailand after being refused entry to Hong Kong, and the Chinese authorities informed the UK that they had barred Glitter from entry. So he was deported from Vietnam after spending almost 3 years in jail for sexually abusing 2 girls. He flew to Hong Kong from Bangkok after refusing to fly to the UK, and it just became, this horrible, horrible story. It was world news for a long time there, back in the late part of 2008, for sure. So the sad part of it is that those 2 great pieces of music, Rock and Roll Part 1 and Rock and Roll Part 2, which were synonymous with sporting events, were essentially erased from history. Nobody plays those songs anymore because nobody wants to be associated with a convicted pedophile. So there's a sad part to the story. It's tragic for sure.
It was not, Brian, on This Week in Music History when John Lennon was shot, but his killer comes up in the news again this week in 2014.
Yeah, and he's come up several times since, but this was a 59-year-old Mark David Chapman being denied parole for the 8th time in 2014. And hasn't really, in terms of restitution, in terms of apology, that it's come, but not really the way I think that the parole board would want to see. So, I've asked this question of other music fans before. As of today, it's been 45 years since the tragic assassination of John Lennon. Should Mark David Chapman ever be released from prison? Do you think he should see the light of day at some point?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the lack of remorse certainly doesn't bode well for him. But I would have to say no, and I've been accused of being a hard ass before for such a stance. But you took a life with intent, and I think you've sacrificed all of your freedoms from that point forward.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And because Mark David Chapman, he's found Jesus in prison, as many people do, and he says that he's remorseful for what happened. But in terms of really accepting responsibility for those actions, he still played the mental health card consistently and just said, I didn't know what I was doing. But his actions leading up to and including the actual event of the assassination would indicate otherwise. I think it was a fairly deliberate act. He knew what he was doing.
We played Blow It High Dough from the Hip with intent to start This Week in Music History today, Brian, and that's because it was this week in 2016 when I guess you could say we all paid our final farewell to Gord and the gang.
Did we ever? Wow, what an event in Canadian history. So yeah, it was August 20th, 2016. I find it hard to believe that it's been 9 years since we watched that final concert. But yep, the Hip wrapped up their farewell Canadian tour in Kingston, Ontario, at the Rogers Cave Rock Center, and a few other people joined in to watch that via television. I think it was a television audience of around 12 million people, one of the largest viewing audiences in Canadian history, to see Gord and the Tragically Hip say farewell. So it was an amazing event, committed to a concert release later on, the Tragically Hip and National Celebration. And, it's there for us to enjoy. But, again, bittersweet, still sad because we miss Gord. And he was such an amazing performer, such an amazing Canadian. And he's no longer with us, which is sad.
I remember it vividly at a house party with a big screen in the backyard in Cambridge. A fantastic night. Dozens of us gathered outdoors around this big screen to listen and watch and reminisce and have a couple of pops and whatnot. Where were you? Where did you see the concert?
Very similar. I have a backyard bar, and we have a TV in it. So a bunch of friends came, and we gathered outside and watched the concert from beginning to end, and toasted the Tragically Hip and toasted all things Canadian and, how great it is to live in this country. And, it was a very, very nice event. But again, sad because we knew it was going to be the last time we'd be seeing the Hip. And at that point, gosh, I'd probably seen the Hip maybe half a dozen times in my life. So it was a bittersweet evening for sure.
Brian Allison is our good friend of the program and a musicologist who joins us every Monday morning at 11 for This Week in Music History. I got to get to that backyard bar before the summer is up. I'm going to make that happen, but for now, we'll just take a break and continue with This Week in Music History for this Monday, the 18th of August. What does that tie in to every single show of this Mike Farwell show? You'll learn that. And one of the most played jukebox songs of the past century. Also a note coming up on This Week in Music History here on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Monday mornings at 11, our good friend and musicologist Brian Allison brings us This Week in Music History on the radio. Don't forget This Week in Music History on Facebook. Find the page name This Week in Music History and learn all about the things we talk about here and more from every week in music history. It's always a fun trip down memory lane. Brian, we all know the song Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana, but on This Week in 1991, we learn a little more about the video for Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Yeah, August 17th, 1991 was the date that they shot the video for Smells Like Teen Spirit. And it was shot in Culver City, California. Cost less than $50,000 to make, which even in 1991 was pretty economical for a major music video shoot. People were spending in the millions of dollars for videos back in the early 90s. So Nirvana, cheap budget and made a very, very iconic video. The cool thing about it was that all the kids that are in it, of course, you've seen the video. It's like a sort of a dark-sided high school assembly with Nirvana playing live. And the students who all played, the students in the video, were invited to the shoot the night before. Nirvana had played a show in California, and they handed out flyers and said, hey, if you want to be in our latest video, it's going to be, sort of a school assembly theme. Show up in your attire tomorrow, and you can be in the video. So people did. They showed up, and that's how the video was shot. And it became, this iconic music video. It won them the MTV Video Music Award in 2000 for Best Alternative Group and Best New Artist. And eventually, Teen Spirit was named by Guinness to be the most played video on MTV Europe in history. So pretty iconic video for sure.
You had a little piece of trivia too, and I always love your trivia tidbits associated with these stories.
I thought it was cool too. The video was shot at Culver City High School, as I said, and the janitor, who kind of has a feature role throughout the video, was the actual janitor who worked at Culver City High School, not an actor. They showed up to do the video. This guy was mopping the floors, and they were like, you want to be in our video? He was like, yeah, sure.
I love it.
Become sort of this celebrity based on just showing up to work to do the janitor work that day.
This week, Brian, in 1988, we learned a couple of the most played jukebox songs of the past century.
Yeah, August 1988. So it was announced that two iconic songs, Patsy Cline's Crazy and Elvis Presley's Hound Dog, were the most played jukebox songs of the past century, 100 years. So that's a pretty impressive record, to hold a record for an entire century, and to know that one of your songs is, one of the top two songs that's played on a jukebox is impressive.
I did not know the jukebox's, though, connection to the Mafia.
Oh, you should do some. We could probably do a whole show on that. So jukeboxes themselves, when they started to be placed, were placed by crime families for the most part, and they were a source of income. And that also allowed them to recoup money as a form of payola. So if you wanted your song in the jukebox, you had to pay the family. And that's how they made a lot of their money in the early days.
Fantastic. I love it. I can just see Elvis Presley ponying up for Hound Dog to be in the jukebox, eh?
I don't know that Elvis or Patsy were ever linked to that, but for sure there were lots of other artists at the time who, people know, they paid the family to get their records in jukeboxes so people could hear them.
I had no idea. Another neat trivia tidbit from This Week in Music History, and it's also This Week in music history going back to 1977. I guess we can thank This Week in Music History for bringing us The Police.
First concert ever, August 18th, 1977. So they played their first official show at a small little nightclub called Rebecca's Nightclub in Birmingham. And, I mean, it just took off from there. Within 2 years, obviously the Police would be major recording artists with songs like Can't Stand Losing You and Roxanne and Message in a Bottle. And then by probably just less than 5 to 6 years later, in 1983, they were arguably the biggest band on the planet before they very suddenly pulled the plug and disbanded. But it was a very nice run for the Police that started this week in 1977.
All right, and one more before I let you go, Brian, because it was actually a week ago tomorrow, on August the 12th, 1971, that King Curtis died. But there is a connection between King Curtis and every episode of this radio show.
There is, and I think of King Curtis and his story every time I hear your show, because he was a major recording artist that was fairly unknown, a session player back in the 60s, the 50s and the 60s, and he recorded saxophone tracks on some very, very important songs, including he plays that famous saxophone on Yakety Yak, which you have used for your Talkback Hour consistently for as long as I can remember anyway. So every time when I hear the Talkback Hour coming on and you play Yakety Yak, I think of King Curtis, who died on August the 12th, 1971. It was a bit of a sad death. He was a young man, lived in New York City, and it was a hot day in August, as it would be, and his air conditioning was malfunctioning. So he left his apartment and went down to the power room in the apartment to try to fix it. As he was going down the front steps, he got into a verbal altercation with a person who wasn't happy with him, and the guy pulled a knife out and stabbed him, and he died. And I think he was only 31 years old at the time of his death. And he had recorded some major hits, again, Yakety Yak. He also played on Respect, the song by Aretha Franklin. So this was a guy who was quite well known and quite established.
We will certainly think of King Curtis with our Rant or Rave Talkback Hour in about a half hour's time. As always, Brian, great trip down memory lane. Thanks for being here this morning.
My pleasure. Glad to talk to you again. I hope you had a good holiday.
I certainly did, and we'll catch up in that backyard bar of yours in short order, okay?
The gate is open.
Thanks, Brian. Take care.
Okay, see ya.
Brian Allison is a musicologist, and he brings us This Week in Music History every Monday morning at 11 here on the radio. Don't forget to check out his Facebook page of the same name, This Week in Music History, and you'll get just that. Little trip down a musical memory lane. Every Monday at 11 right here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I just wanted to take a moment to send a sincere thank you to Ontario Premier Doug Ford. No, that's right. Like a huge thank you to Premier Ford. Last week, while away, I took advantage of the time to get some miles, or I should say kilometers in this country, on the old motorcycle, the annual moto trip, during which I sponged off friends, one of them being a statistician for the Oshawa Generals, who I've gotten to know over my time in the Ontario Hockey League. And since I was sponging off him for accommodations, I thought, well, I should take a host's gift with me to his place in Bancroft as a thank you for putting us motorcycle riders up for the night. And look, my motorcycle is technically classified as sport touring, but she's built a little more for speed than she is for comfort. And I don't carry a lot of gear with me. So I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to pick up something along the way at a gas bar, maybe some beef jerky and a tube of Pringles. And so I get to a gas bar not far from Bancroft. And what do I find a shelf of? But some beautiful Ontario wines. That'll fit nicely in a saddlebag too. Into the bag it went. And my buddy Neil, let's forget the fact he made me drink from an Oshawa General's coffee mug the morning after, but he got a bottle of wine instead of beef jerky and Pringles as a host's gift. All thanks to Ontario Premier Doug Ford and putting that booze in convenient places for us, huh? That's what he did, all right. An update from the 570 News Center, and then you get some Drewe's Views coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Now, that cat couldn't spell to win a bet, but he carried this battered notebook full of his poetry. More soul per square word than the Lord's Prayer. He was the kind of guy that called a spade a shovel, and a violin a fiddle, and a lady ma'am. And I don't even know why I think of him now. Maybe because he never told me a lie he'd have to apologize for later. Because he'd speak to a guy straight, eyeball to bloodshot eyeball, like he'd never even had a secret.
That is our friend David Drewe, owner, negotiating change, government relations, stakeholder engagement strategies. I think of him all the time because in between our weekly get-togethers, I mean, what else could I do but think about David? Because we get together every week, just like we said the last time we talked to each other. David, as always, appreciate the views. Safe travels home, and we'll talk again in a week's time.
See you in person, I hope.
Well, here you are. See?
That was
July 28th. Whatever. What's it, August 18th? What's a couple of weeks between friends?
I should have been wearing my Time in Relative Dimensions and Space t-shirt just so we could make this work for
You were in
physics.
Sudbury then via Zoom. The next week was a holiday. The week after that was my holiday. And here we are. Just like we haven't missed a beat.
A few news stories here and there.
A few news stories here and there. Let's talk about the federal government and whether or not it's the government of the working class, David.
Okay. Well, I don't want to say legislated. Well, yeah, I guess they kind of did. Just order the air attendants back to work.
They did.
And I really do wonder how many people who were voting to stop Pierre Poilievre were worried about him doing something like this. And I really wonder, is this sustainable for the Liberals to maintain the poll numbers they are while they are showing such, I don't want to say contempt, but I will say apathy towards the left wing of the party and the more leftward supporters who voted for them in the last election. And like, what is it? I just had the numbers handy. They're at 70% almost nationally, the federal Liberals.
So this is beyond the honeymoon phase now.
Well, no, like honestly, I think the quality of the honeymoon is measured by how long it lasts, not by the sugar high of the few days after. We are beyond the few days, but this is the crazy number to me. 59% in Alberta. The federal, if I'd have told you a year ago, hey, Mike, in a year, 6 out of 10 Albertans are going to be supporting the Liberals. At that point, it was like 15% of Canadians.
I would not have spoken to you for 3 weeks if you told me that.
Honestly, you probably would have had people calling me in. You would have filled up an entire hour of people calling me an idiot. And like, I probably would have blocked out going, I really poked the bear on that one. Ha, 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 silly Dave. Because there's no way I would have believed it either. But here we are. 6 out of 10 Albertans are liking this government. That's historic. Like, I'm not just saying Justin Trudeau had it bad in Alberta, but Jean Chrétien never had that. And they had seats in Alberta. I don't know how far back you would have to go to find Liberal popularity like that in Alberta. And we're between elections and we're still close to the last one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But let's not diminish this in any way. This is historic. Whatever they are doing right now seems to be working and holding Canada together, including a lot of non-traditional supporters. It's not that they are just holding together what they had. Like, they didn't pull 60% out of Alberta in the last election. There are people who are genuinely wanting to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I'll come back and say it again. I think a large part of it is because they are doing things that a lot of us has wanted the governments to be doing for 20 years. And, these pipelines, grand national projects. So he's getting the benefit of the doubt from a whole lot of people.
I like what you said, but I want to push back a little bit on, they're not doing things. They're talking about doing things. And you and I have talked about in the past, getting them done is a completely different story. And we all know Mark Carney wants to move at the speed of business. Good luck.
I was listening to the Hurly Burly, and I forget the dude. I'm sorry, I wasn't ready for this question, but they were interviewing this dude who basically runs an Aboriginal-funded Aboriginal consulting agency because he's got an MBA from Harvard, grew up on a First Nation on a reserve, and with his unique business experience, he set up this company where he translates business into the First Nations. Because often what he says happens too often is you have the companies coming in with the gobbledygook, and it's not that they are intentionally trying to gobbledygook, but they are speaking Wall Street because that's the language they are used to speaking. And, walking in, most First Nations are more interested in getting to know you as a neighbor than, what your credit rating is and what your annual returns are. How did I tangent off onto this?
Well, I was just talking about moving at the speed of business.
So this guy's line was, our First Nations are prepared to move at the speed of trust.
Interesting.
And it was very neat. He was throwing a little bit of shade at Mark Carney for the rushing at the beginning because that cost a little bit of trust. But it's worth listening to if you are skeptical. Because, there's more than $1 billion of Aboriginal-owned business assets in Canada. And it's just a wave that's starting to take off. And as more and more success stories happen, apparently in Alaska, they have a First Nations Enterprise Corporation that is the largest employer of non-Aboriginals in Alaska now. Like, there are so many success stories popping up about what happens when a First Nation gets equity in an industry they want to pursue. And literally in Alaska, it's bigger than the Air Force Base that Putin just visited.
Okay, let's move on to supply management because that's a fun topic. But in particular, what Canada is facing now when it comes to its exports of canola.
Yeah, why don't we just supply manage canola?
No, please not. More of the supply management. Can we stop it?
No, but seriously, apparently, canola is just so profitable that we have to be growing it, even though every 2 years it feels like China says, we're grouchy at Canada about something or another, and the first punch is always canola. And every time the federal government steps up and provides compensation for these farmers for their risk, and it's no, every 2 years, it's like if you choose to take your Canadian passport and move into a war zone, I think the government owes you a slap in the face on your way out the door to say, by the way, you're on your own. If you are choosing to export canola to China as your business model, how much does a taxpayer owe you when China's it?
I like that. We'll add that to the Farwell Show lexicon. When China's it.
Yeah, they use trade, much like Trump is starting to, for foreign policy hammers on anything. And that's not a customer that we want to be building a business model on. But every 2 or 3 years, we are shoveling money out to the farmers. And I don't blame the farmers because, honestly, if there's no risk, why wouldn't you? We've built a business model for them. Yes. Let's supply management. How much canola do we actually need?
That's a great question.
If you want to sell to China, great. Here's an insurance program for you.
The federal government.
Look, no, for market built.
Okay.
But if you're going to China, you're either doing it on your own risk or some sort of insurance program because, I'm sorry, this is very skeptical because I don't want to be that guy who says, why do I care about canola? Because on the other hand, why do they care about the auto sector, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And I don't want to play that game, but why do I care so much about the canola sector that I am bailing out this business model? Is it really unviable without China? And if so, why is it still worth us to be pumping out as taxpayers? No, get insurance. Get insurance.
Canola insurance.
Yeah, get your crazy dictatorship insurance.
From David Drew's lips to the industry's ears, it's canola insurance time. All right, before the break, let's talk about the race to, I guess, have more meaningful meetings with more countries. Are we supposed to compete with Donald Trump in this regard?
Well, no, it would just be nice to be in the room.
Okay.
And we don't know what happened, between Putin and Trump. But we know that almost before the meeting ended, the American contingent was reaching out to the Europeans and inviting them for a follow-up meeting. So the legit people in the room of the background were so afraid of what they heard or did not hear that they are calling the bigwigs to the room to try and talk them off of whatever was being bandied about. And we're not there. And we've talked about this before. What's Trump's biggest fear? China. I could easily picture he and Putin sitting in a room and saying, well, let's divvy up the Arctic while we're divvying up Ukraine. Your spheres of influence, our spheres of influence, just like post-World War II. It's kind of how Trump pictures himself. He wants a peace prize. He's saying openly and loud. He doesn't understand why he's not openly being considered for a peace prize. So yeah, we really need to be in that room for a whole lot of reasons, but we're not there.
The room where it happened. The room where it happened. David Drewe is in this room with us Monday mornings, 11:30, Drew's Views. And we will talk about that by-election for the Conservative Party leader today. And why is payment for airline attendants a little bit like funding healthcare? We'll talk about it as Drew's Views continues on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Monday mornings at 11:30, David Drewe joins us to share his views in a segment we appropriately called Drew's Views. David is a former Conservative Party staffer and now owns Negotiating Change, Government Relations, Stakeholder Engagement Strategies. Let's put on that former Conservative Party staffer's hat, David, because you must love the fact that the leader of the party for which you were once employed is competing in a by-election that he will certainly win. Now what?
Well, I'm most curious to see who comes in 210th.
What a ballot, eh?
What a ballot.
What a ballot.
But honestly, the 83% is the benchmark that everybody is throwing about because that's what the last guy got in the last election. La-di-da, who cares? If Pierre Poilievre gets 75% of the vote, does that make his leadership in jeopardy? No.
But what if he gets 65% of the vote?
Even then, I still say no.
Okay.
If he gets 95% of it, does that secure his leadership? No. All this does is determine how solid the ground is he's going to be standing on through the fall session, leading towards the leadership review and the convention coming up in, I believe it's January in Calgary. Might be February, I forgot now. He's going to be in the House again for the first time since the election, where he is at his best, most generally speaking. So by the time that review comes around, how significant will 65, 75, or 85 or 95 be? If he's a flop in the House, it doesn't matter. He's going to be toasted. If he's doing well in the House and the numbers are recovering, he's going to have a good shot. But, it is kind of curious to see how he's going to do in this election. But let's not try to attach all of this meaning to it just because we have to talk about it. It's going to be curious to see, because there's that one woman I've mentioned, I can't remember her name now, but she is the biggest victim of this longest ballot committee because she is a genuine local who is running legitimately as an independent. And oh my gosh, I would look up her name and send it to your producer, Mike. Get it? Your producer, Mike? Because I think she's a worthwhile interview just because, she's that candidate you could picture winning if it wasn't for. But she's taking both guns from a very conservative mindset at Pierre Poilievre for being a carpetbagger. And what kind of attention is our riding going to get when he's all focused on the Ottawa things? And I think some of her fears are unreasonable, but boy, she expresses them very well. And if you didn't have 200 plus other jokers on the ballot, I think she would be doing pretty darn well. But just for the name recognition, she's in a flood So, like Pierre Poilievre, he'll do okay.
Interesting that you mention Ottawa things, because I had a conversation earlier today with our good friend Peter Wollstonecroft, who taught you at University of Waterloo.
Doc
Woolley, a retired professor of poli-sci. And we had fun, quite frankly, speculating a little bit on where Pierre Poilievre goes next, because Damien Carrick has said he will run in Battle River-Crowfoot when the next general election happens. So that means Pierre Poilievre will have to run somewhere else. Where will that be, do you suppose? Because Carleton didn't want him, and I'm not sure he goes back there.
But there is this riding very close to Ottawa that consistently elects Cheryl Gallant. And if you Google Cheryl Gallant, you'll understand. If they will elect her, they will find no problems at all electing Pierre Poilievre. No, she is...
So they're going to have to punt her then to somewhere else?
Well, she's been around long enough that I think she can just get some sort of sinecure. You know, like Damien got the, please take a break, we'll take care of you in the interim, she will get a post-retirement job of some sort. Or not.
Yeah.
Maybe they will, maybe they'll Mike Harris her and just Michael Harris, the good one, find a reason to cannonball her and throw her out. And then there's an open riding for the favorite child, so to speak.
I like to refer to him as the real Michael Harris, just in case you're curious.
I remember when we were doing a Friday 4 and Brittany Bordelon was on the panel with us. And we had the confusion. Then we realized we were talking about Michael Harris, the regional councillor.
The real Michael Harris.
She blurted out, oh, you mean the good one? And I cracked up laughing because I couldn't believe she said that on air out loud.
Oh, she did. Brittany knows her stuff, and she's not afraid to say it. Okay.
Yeah, I miss her.
I do too. I've run us down to about 90 seconds, but let's talk about your comparison between airline attendant compensation and healthcare funding.
Yeah, they're both really, really more complicated than were being presented in the conversations about it. So first of all, with healthcare funding, it's like, well, how much does the federal government fund? And what nobody ever talks about is the tax points that the federal government gave to the provinces years ago. And we talk about the cash dollars. No, it's more complicated than that. I'm not saying the federal government does pay their fair share. With the airline attendants, it's being said that they are not paid for time on the ground. However, years ago, they had a settlement where they got a substantial pay bump to compensate them for that specific issue. So, again, they are being paid for that in terms of the premium on their wages. That doesn't mean they don't have something to complain about, because they do. The issue is, well, they're spending a heck of a lot more time on the ground than they did when they were having that settlement. And again, it's the government's fault in both cases. Seriously, why are planes spending so much time on the ground? Because there were bottlenecks. Why are there bottlenecks? Either because it's the government resources, or B, the government regulations, or C, the costs. Like, if we want to have fast, convenient air travel, we have to pay for it. If we want cheap air travel, we have to prepare for these sacrifices. But we're trying to pretend we can have it all, and it's coming through in airplanes spending time on the ground and staff having to have a lot more dead time. Like, they have an issue, but they are sort of being paid for it. The issue is they're not being paid enough.
David Drewe is the owner of Negotiating Change, Government Relations, Stakeholder Engagement Strategies. He joins us every Monday morning at this time for Drew's Views. We're going to take a break. David Drewe, don't go anywhere, okay?
Okay.
Okay, he'll stay here. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I told David Drewe to stay right where he was because earlier, off the air, he generously offered to spend more time with us today. And that time is your time. Every day from noon until 1, it is open phone lines for whatever it is that's on your mind. So you can pick David's brain, you can pick my brain, you can pick at both of them together. Mondays are reserved for your rants and or your raves. That's in keeping with tradition here on the program. So a rant has you upset about something, a rave has you happy about it. If there's something you didn't get to weigh in on earlier today, take advantage in the next 60 minutes of open line radio as David Drewe stays with us. Rant or Rave is coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio.
Take out the papers and in the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage out of sight, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Every day from noon until 1, we open the phone lines so we can hear directly from you. Maybe there was something we talked about earlier on the show. You didn't get to have your say then. You want your say now? We make space for that. Or maybe it's something else entirely. Whatever it is, bring it to the program. You get to start the conversation. 519-570-2545. By cell, it's as simple as star 570. And long distance toll free, 1-800-570-5715. David Drewe stays in studio with us, and we'll get right to the phones because they're busy already. Paul, good afternoon.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
My first comment is regarding, well, my entire rant will be about Monsieur Poilievre, or whatever you call him. How can a man who loses his own riding be kept on and called conservative leader? He's no longer a goddamn excuse me, I apologize. He's no longer a politician. He lost. And he not only lost, he lost a riding that he had held successfully for numerous years. Well, there has to be a good reason. Then somebody out west gets paid off, and I don't really care how anybody else feels about my comment there, because he had to be paid off to step aside to let him come in and try to do this by-election. And that's another embarrassment to me as a voter of, 62 years.
All right, Paul.
I have voted for all three parties, but I have never voted for anybody that I didn't go out and see and listen to and get a hold of. I got a tape sent in to me from out west from a friend on this candidate, and he's doing the same crap he was doing in the initial election.
Hey, listen, I hear that he hasn't changed his approach a whole lot, and Peter Wollstonecroft and I earlier today wondered about that. Will there be a different Pierre Poilievre when he returns as an MP and becomes, again, has that seat in the House of Commons as the leader of the official opposition? Your rant is noted. I got to rant about this rather similarly earlier. David, what are your thoughts?
I haven't heard a question like that since I was at an election candidates debate and questions were coming from the floor. It started off as a how can, and after that it was pretty much, and when's he going to stop beating his wife? And no, but like that's just it. I haven't heard a question that loaded.
Yep.
Since candidates meetings, and I'm.
But I said this earlier today, and I would say this, and I know it's happened before, as Peter Wollstonecroft pointed out, and I get it. I don't care if this was the Liberal leader, the NDP leader, the Green leader. I find this distasteful. I really do. I'm with Paul. I get that the system allows for it, and Peter Wollstonecroft dared me to write the rule or the law that would prevent it. So I understand what I'm up against here, but it kind of sucks. I'm with Paul on this. You did lose, and you don't just get to go kick somebody out in a safer place and take his place. Well, you do, but you shouldn't. You shouldn't.
Why?
Why? Well, because that's not democratic.
How?
You lost. The voters have spoken.
The voters of one riding have spoken. Now
Yes.
the voters of a totally different riding are having a totally different conversation.
But they spoke already. They elected their guy. You don't go in there and move that guy out just because you think you can win there. It's not fair. It's not fair, David. I want fair elections.
Fair. Define fair in this case. What is unfair about, if the voters of that riding choose to agree with you, we're going to have a really interesting night tonight.
Well, but Damien Carrick won, and now he's not an MP. That's not fair. He ran, he won, he earned the job, and now he just gets shoved aside.
Mm-hmm.
As Paul points out, you know as well as I do, David, and Paul knows, Damien Carrick's being looked after.
Yes.
Yes.
And just the same way that I'm picturing, when you said where next and Damien Carrick runs again, Cheryl Gallant will be taken care of.
Right.
This is like when Elmer McKay stepped aside to make room for Brian Mulrooney. He was taken care of. Peter McKay was very well taken care of because Elmer McKay stepped aside for Brian Mulrooney. This is part of the system.
But the system sucks. This is a problem with it.
Yeah, but that's just it. Don't hate the player, hate the game.
All right, I do hate the game.
You know what I mean? And that's just it.
Fair.
You can talk about how distasteful it is, but what I'm finding crazy is I don't remember people being upset about this when John Tory did it. I don't remember people being so upset about it in all the other cases, but something when Pierre Poilievre does it, ooh. And if you don't like somebody, the way they chew their food is going to bother you. And that's Pierre Poilievre.
I got nothing against, I've had some conversations with them. Don't mind them. I think, and maybe we've just awakened to the flaw in the system. But I'll leave it right there because I want to get to Ian next. Good afternoon, Ian.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. Talking about the system sucking, I'm calling because I'm sure both you and Drew know that there is a lot of fraud out there. And I hate to say it, but I got frauded last week, and what I'm bringing up is that Interact e-transfer is only in Canada, only between Canadian banking institutions, and they need to figure out a better system.
All right, I got to let you go there because what also sucks is your phone, but David, I feel like you had something to add there.
No, I was actually expecting that. It's very easy to receive an e-transfer that looks totally legitimate, but it's not from a Canadian bank. And what he's saying is, no, e-transfers only work between Canadian banks. So anything, but yeah, it almost sounded like he had his window down as he was driving.
Yeah,
no, but just the way it was shush, 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 because it was very, very steady interference. It wasn't random static.
Good point about the Interact e-transfer being just between these Canadian banking institutions. I worry, honestly, the older I get and perhaps the more gullible, but the scams are getting so sophisticated. They look legit. Be very careful. And this is a great example.
Yeah, it was at the point a few years back where it was like I was cautioning my parents on how to do things in a smart way, and now I'm looking at my nieces like, okay, help Uncle Dave out.
Exactly. Help us now. We're getting to be the older guys in the room. Rant or Rave on Mondays is your Talkback Hour. David Drewe stays in studio with us, and we take more calls right after this. It's the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The Talkback Hour is just that, your chance to talk back to us. And on Mondays, it's for ranting and or raving. We'll go right back to the phones. Kyle, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Well, talk about fairness. It's interesting that the government is stopping a protest or what do you call it from Air Canada, but they won't stop the Canada Post one. Very interesting. But I want to go back to what David Drewe said about Putin and China. Trump and China. David, do you really think that Trump is scared of China versus Putin?
I don't know that
you need your micro. Oh, there we go.
I don't know that he's afraid of China, but I think he looks at China as an enemy, and he doesn't look at Putin as one.
I think he looks at Putin as one. I think he's scared of Putin, and I'll tell you the reason why. I bet you a big shiny dollar because we know that Russia is very smart, and they could hack into anything just like the United States. And I bet you the reason why that one of the reasons why that Trump, of course, because we're going to be waiting another 24 hours until this deal comes by, is the fact that I bet you Putin has Trump on the Epstein files is one of the reasons why he will not make a deal with, Putin will not make a deal with Trump, is because I bet you Russia has some intel on Trump that goes more deeper than just trying to get Ukraine and trying to get where Donbass back in those places. I bet you he knows that Putin's got good allies with China. I think that Putin is very smart at what he does. The guy's a former KGB member. What does Trump have besides bankrupting seven of his businesses and talking all that he can stop this and stop that and stop this and he's going to be the next hero and stuff? I knew it before when he was going into the United States that there was not going to be a deal made, and just shows him that the guy's a coward. In my opinion, I mean the guy can't make a deal. I think he knows more that Putin basically owns Trump, just like China does own Trump, and they know that they're now the bigger players in the United States going forward because of, how much the United States has wrecked with tariffs going around the world, rooting the closer allies to them, making bigger deals or trying to make bigger deals with the guys that are against, So I'm just telling you, that's my deal on it, Drewe or David Drewe. I think that's the way I look at it. Look at China, they were not afraid to,
Okay, Kyle, we got to wind up here, bud.
All right. Yep. Bye.
Okay, thanks.
That's a mighty big sandwich for me to try and take a bite out. How much time do we have?
Well, I mean, Kyle took a lot of it, but use what you need.
No, I just say I don't know. I can agree with a lot of what Kyle said, but in terms of the anticipating of the whys, it isn't necessarily true that Putin needs to have something over Trump, because it's equally possible that Trump is just a chump. Or that, the reason we don't have a deal is because Trump's people pulled the plug on Trump being prepared to slice away half of Ukraine. There's a whole lot of what Kyle said about Trump that I agree with, but it's just buying into the whole motives of the behinds of the whys, and just the idea that Trump invited Putin into his limo, the Beast, for the ride along. And the pictures and the video you see of Putin at that face, he's like, oh my gosh, are the canary feathers sticking out of my mouth? It was crazy. Anyway, that's as far as I'll go with the bite out of that sandwich.
Absolutely. Thanks for the sandwich, though, Kyle. It is lunchtime after all. Tom, good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
The thing is, Trump put all kinds of tariffs on China and India because they're buying oil from Russia, and China and Russia and India, they have an agreement. They support each other because they don't want the United States to be too strong. Now, the other thing is, as far as NATO, they set this guy up to go to war.
They set who up to go to war? Trump?
No, they set Zelensky.
Okay. I got to let you go there, Tom, because you got something going on in the background that's a little bit distracting, but go ahead, David.
I agree. The whole idea when Ukraine gave up nuclear weapon capacity was that their security would be protected, and we let them down in 2015, and we didn't respond strong enough, so of course Putin came back for another bite.
I feel like a radio announcer from the 1990s when I say, please remember to turn your radio down in behind when you make a phone call to us. But it helps, because otherwise it gets distracting.
Especially if you're listening to a different station.
Yes, that could be the case, because it didn't sound like us echoing in the background there, Thomas. Dave, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to give a big shout-out and an honorable mention on the same subject to our two Canadian golfers who made the final cut in going for the championship over the past weekend. And the honorable mention is a Canadian in that same tournament who ended up number 33. And
yeah, but you know what number 33 is, Dave? The 32nd loser.
Who's number 33 on your caller list, Mike?
Number 33 on my caller list is Afif.
Well then.
Anyway, I thought he came so close, and to me, he was an honorable mention. He was not a winner. He's an honorable mention.
Okay.
I said it. Have a great day, and welcome back.
Thanks, Dave. I always love Dave keeps his ears and eyes on sports for us and gives due where it is absolutely deserved.
He also seems to be quite positive most of the time. I don't recall, and I'm not saying I listen every week like you do, but I don't recall him throwing flames at anyone. It's generally flowers.
That's an excellent point. We'll take a break, come back with more Rant or Rave. David Drewe in studio with us as we continue on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is a busy show for busy people, and it is a busy talkback hour as we go right back to the phones. Conservative Charlie, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. First off, congratulations and welcome back to you.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that.
I can have just a slight rebuttal to that caller that was just aghast that Pierre Poilievre would be still running. Perhaps that caller could save just a little bit of his venom for Bonnie Crombie, who pulls off the same thing. What's good for that is good for him.
Charlie, appreciate the call. Peter Wollstonecroft said something similar. David Drewe, who's in studio with us, today reminded us of John Tory doing the same thing provincially, and Charlie is not wrong. Bonnie Crombie thought she found a pretty safe seat there in old Mississauga and couldn't win it.
She was the mayor.
She had been, yes.
I mean, like, so just I forget, was it Grant who had that first call?
No, it was Paul.
Paul. Yeah, just to apply the logic, she was mayor there, and the voters rejected her. What business does she have? And so, well, frankly, her voters had their decision. Now the Liberal Party has theirs, just like the Conservative Party has theirs.
Knives are going to come out during that leadership review for Bonnie Crombie, for sure.
Oh, they're already out.
They are. The New Leaf Liberals are there. Okay. Before I let you go, David, we had a really interesting, if not concerning, story from the Victoria Park area of Kitchener. And regional police let us know about a 32-year-old man charged with a number of offenses after a family was approached. This suspect makes sexual comments towards them and then damages property by ripping a pride flag from a child's bike carrier.
Yeah, and I want to know what was going through that guy's head. And don't get me wrong, it's not that I want to explain it away or minimize it in any way at all, but when I mentioned that this had caught my attention, the first reaction you had was 32. He should know better.
Yeah.
And so that is really, I'm looking at it from the other end of the telescope. He's 32. How could he not know better? Was this a failure of the system? Blah, blah, blah. I don't care. But we talked about the Hockey Canada trial being a good example for restorative justice, and I poo-pooed that idea altogether. This would be a good idea for restorative justice. If this guy could learn the error of his ways and pay it forward in a positive way, that would not only be a better use of our resources than punishing him or putting him under this, that, or other kind of supervision, but also his crowd of people that he is around, he didn't feel like he was going to be shunned by them. They're going to see the positive consequences and have somebody in their midst who might change their attitudes as well if we do this right. I want to know what was going through his head, not to forgive him in any way at all. But this is an example where these people could easily pass each other in the park again. And wouldn't it be nice for both of them to feel safe and have a friendly relationship and to know what the issue was? I don't want it to steal a lot of time on this, but this is just one of the ones, how could he not know better?
Maybe an opportunity for restorative justice. You'll come back next Monday morning, yes?
Will you be here next week?
I will, of course.
Are you
I'm
sure?
always here. David Drewe joins us every Monday at 11:30. He stuck around for Talkback today. Rant or Rave continues on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. On Mondays, our Talkback Hour is for your rants and or raves. David Drewe has left the building, so it's just you and me for the rest of the show. Keep me entertained, okay? Let's get right back to the phones. Dallas, good afternoon.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Yes, sir. I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm not doing too bad at all.
Good.
So I'm going to touch on the Pierre Poilievre thing.
Sure.
I agree with you. I don't believe in the idea of somebody being able, that lives in one end of the country, being able to go to the other end of the country just because they know they can win. I've never believed in that, and yet to this day I do not. As far as the long ballot thing, I still don't understand what these people are trying to accomplish with that. And I think I heard you talking with Mr. Wolf, I believe it was.
Wollstonecroft, yes.
Right. As far he was talking about percentages as to how his party's going to take it. Well, if there's 214 people on the ballot, I don't see how you can even bring those percentages into the equation. Who knows what he's going to get because, 214 people vote from the South. There goes 5%. You get what I mean?
No, I do get what you mean, Dallas, and it's a really good point, and I appreciate you bringing it up. Elections Canada has intervened to a degree in this case. And I think the longest ballot group has kind of run its course here. They've probably overextended themselves now, and I don't think we'll be hearing from them in the same ways again. We shall see. But in this case, for the election today, it will be a write-in ballot. So they're not going to list 214 names, and you have to find the name you want to pick. You're going to have to actually write the name and the party of your preferred candidate. So that should help weed out some of these shenanigans. That's the kindest way I can put it. And what the group is hoping to accomplish, it's hoping to draw attention to the need for electoral reform. But what I think they're doing instead is just pissing people off, and it's getting a little bit goofy. So anyway, great points, Dallas. Appreciate the call. Greg, you're next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Hey, number 38 here.
Hello, 38. Farwell's force member number.
That'd be me. So, okay, help me out here. Unions, okay, they're legal, bargaining, all that. Yeah, they have the right to strike. Okay, and then all of a sudden, if it's not a good strike scenario, government, okay, back to work legislation, sometimes gone. Now these ones aren't. It just seems like, is anything actually valid? Like, everyone just seems to, like who's got the final word on this? Because it sounds like at any given point, anything can be ignored about what's supposed to be out there. And is there illegal strike? Now they want to call it, like, well, what's the difference? Like, what retribution are they going to face just because, hey, we're not going to listen to this court order? Just like the court order for the St. Paddy's Day thing. Everyone said, forget that. And I didn't, hear anything really different resulting. Like it seems like a merry-go-round. Like where is anything really going to be solved? And sort of, okay, here's the final answer.
I guess it'll be solved in the courts, Greg, but I think you raise another really interesting point here and ask an interesting question in this. And I will say again, I talked about this near the beginning of the show today, who's having the worst PR day, Air Canada or our Prime Minister? Because Mark Carney wasted zero time trying to force binding arbitration here and bringing an end, legislating the employees back to work. Usually that is a pretty big hammer that you don't usually bring in until much further down the road. So it's a really good question, Greg. And I think the answer ultimately will be the courts. It reminds me of the notwithstanding clause that we're seeing get used politically more and more often here, just so a given party and or leader can exert their will where otherwise there might have been the checks and balances in place to prevent it. So, yeah, good observation from where you're sitting today. Afif, Farwell's force member number 33. Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. Okay. I feel bad for, what's that called?
Afif, what do you got going on with your phone there, buddy?
You can't hear me?
Barely.
Yeah. I'm not too sure because I just have it on speaker like I always did.
Okay, no, I heard, anyway, go ahead. I heard some static I couldn't figure out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just wondering, I just feel bad for the actual, flight attendants because, I know they want to take more money and one of the flight attendants even said, we want to go back to work and, help out, but we also want more money, which, it's true because after what I heard, they only get paid after the door closes, that's horrible. Because, they really should get more with that.
Listen, I understand where you're coming from, Afif, and it is flight attendants get paid for the time in the air. As David Drewe pointed out earlier when we were talking about this, there has been a previous pay increase that was meant to compensate in some way for that time not in the air. But this is an industry practice. And yeah, I think we can all relate to that. You're on the job in some degree. The work you do before the plane takes off, the work you do after the plane lands, that's time on the job that you should be compensated for. One of the challenges I have with this, where it makes me support Air Canada, is there was a deal that this union agreed to a decade ago, thought they had the cat's meow of deals. We're very proud of it. And now they're saying, well, the wages that we've been paid over these past 10 years haven't kept pace with inflation. Well, guess what? You signed that deal, so sorry that it didn't work out in your favor like you thought it would a decade ago. Either way, this is pretty messy, and I'm with you, Afif. You got to feel for somebody that's doing a job or part of their job and not being paid for it. Rant or Rave continues here. It's your Talkback Hour on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. And we continue with your rants or raves on this Monday afternoon. Andre, good afternoon.
Go Rangers.
Go Rangers.
It's coming.
Next Friday, baby. Next Friday, we kick off the preseason.
Oh, wow. I had to put a jackstrap on that one.
You said it's coming. I told you.
I didn't know it was that fast.
It's that fast, baby. Come on. Fasten your seatbelt. Let's go.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome very much.
I have a couple of rave. One is to the KW soccer because my son, he loves soccer and he loves, of course, his pasta. But thank you very much for KW soccer for what they do.
Does KW soccer make pasta for your son too?
Pardon me?
You said he likes soccer and pasta. They make pasta for him too? What's going on?
They should, yeah.
Okay, all right.
But the thing is that I've heard that a lot of these organizations have so much volunteers. So I never said it before, but I'd like to say thank you to all the volunteers. Even at Memorial Auditorium, they have volunteers too. I was at the Kids Fest yesterday. Beautiful day.
Kids Park.
Yeah.
Down at Victoria Park, yeah.
Thank you. You always put them in line. But anyway, that was my job yesterday, is to stay in line for an hour, and then, kids come, and then I move on to the next line. So I was the little pigeon there. But, Dad's got to do what he's got to do for his kids, right? So big rave, Taylor Swift,
Wait. We went from you're raving about KW soccer and the volunteers, which is great, and then you're raving about Kids Park, which is great. I get it. Yeah. Now you're raving about Taylor Swift?
She was there.
Settle down.
Okay, look it up. It was another girl that was singing, and she was getting the kids to follow up. So
Andre, you're killing me.
I know.
Okay.
Fine sausage and meat. The weather's better. Here we come.
All right. Finest sausage and meat. The weather's better. Here we come. Try the Manitoba sausage. I promise you will not be disappointed. I mean, you got lots of options there. We particularly enjoy the Manitoba sausage. Mary, good afternoon.
Good afternoon and welcome back.
Thank you very much.
And congratulations on your very good choice.
Did I make a good choice or what?
Well, you did.
But Mary, what about? I know it's about time I gave my beloved a diamond ring. I know. But what about her? Think of the choice she made, Mary. Do you feel bad for her?
A little bit.
Yeah, me too.
Anyway,
yeah.
I would be happy to be a bridesmaid or a flower girl.
Oh my goodness! Thank you for that offer.
And I think David Drewe would be a good to make a good homily, and I think the retired guy, Chuck, would be a good comedian. And I also think, and I know a person, that you should ride around in a top-down Black Mustang, around Kitchener-Waterloo.
Well, Mary, you've just got the whole wedding and the after-wedding planned, don't you?
Yeah, and then we should have just a big picnic in the park, bring BYBO, and bring your food, and just have a great time.
You know what happens if we take booze to a local park, don't you, Mary? We get in trouble around here for that behavior.
Oh, well, then we got to get it back carried.
Okay. Well, we'll get a special dispensation to allow it.
You've shown very great wisdom. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mary. I appreciate that. I think the wisdom to which Mary refers is the decision to finally, after 11 years, the poor girl finally got the diamond she so richly deserves. And despite Mary's best efforts to plan the whole thing, we're just going to have a real quiet, real small ceremony to officially make official what's been official for a long time, or quasi-official. Anyway, my beloved and I, we're going to take some vows, the way it should be done, and all that stuff. Paul, rant or rave, good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm all right.
Listen, I've been listening to all these people complaining about Pierre Poilievre running out in Alberta. Some people seem so upset by that. I get a question for you. Where did Carney run?
I forget the riding, to be honest with you.
Yeah, let me give you a hint. Starts with an N, ends in Nepean.
Oh, yeah, Nepean, yes, okay. Who did he punt out of there to make room for himself?
I'm trying to remember. Somebody, he had a funny name. Somebody who had been...
Wait, yes, I remember. The
Chandra Audrey?
Yes, and the Liberal Party, they had it in for him.
That riding, the fellow who had held that riding through several elections prior to deciding, hey, maybe I'm going to run for the Liberal Party, at which point they booted him out and then ran Art Carney in that riding.
Not Art Carney.
Not Art. Art's a sewer worker.
You're almost as funny as Art Carney. You keep this up there, Paul.
Yeah, but listen, all these people who are complaining about Pierre Poilievre running in a safe Conservative riding in Alberta think nothing of the fact that they booted a successful candidate for the Liberal Party.
Okay, but it is a little bit different, Paul. Now, come on.
How is it different? They booted him out.
Okay,
so
hang on.
Well, could run there.
I'll tell you how it's different.
Okay.
Because Poilievre ran and lost, and now he's going to a place that overwhelmingly votes Conservative, so he can win. We don't know how Chandra Arya would have done had he been able to run, but he wasn't even able to run. So Carney won an election.
Now, how about this?
Okay.
Where would Carney have run if he had not kicked
I guess we'll never know.
out?
I guess we'll never know.
Right. Do you think he's going to run in a risky riding?
Of course
Or
not.
is he?
But
run in one that
it doesn't matter.
guaranteed
But Pierre
safe?
Poilievre had as safe a riding as could be. He'd been elected in Carleton for 20 years. He couldn't win.
Right
so
up
it's
until
different.
The time of
It's different.
Redistribution of the riding.
It's different.
Where it moved, it was redistribution of the riding, where it was changed, where there was an extremely high percentage of public service workers.
I got you, and I got to get to a break. Similar, yes, but different. And your point is still taken. And Pierre Poilievre is not the first politician to benefit from this kind of by-election. Doesn't mean we have to like it. That's all. As we continue with Rant or Rave on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Got an email from Al to Mike at 570news.com. Please keep the pressure up to get rid of speed cameras in areas where there are no problems, which right now are the so-called community safety zones. These cameras are either just a cash grab or used for government surveillance purposes. Al, I appreciate the email. I don't think it's the latter, government surveillance. I do think they are revenue generators in order to fill up the coffers to do the road work that the region wants to do. But I can add this to the mix. Well, first of all, let me add the email I got from Wes in the beautiful village of Palmerston, who even sent along video with his email complaining about the cash grab that speed cameras are. Wes's video shows quite clearly one of those electronic signs that tells you what your speed is that had been in operation in an area where a speed camera was about to be installed. So you knew as you approached that area how fast you were going, and you could adjust accordingly if needed. And lo and behold, Wes says in Palmerston, that electronic sign that told you how fast you were going stopped working just before the speed camera was installed. So the speed camera could catch you. Wes, thank you for your email to Mike at 570news.com and sharing with us what's going on in Palmerston. I can tell you from my travels last week during my time away, got on the motorcycle for a little tour. We are far from the only region in this beautiful province of ours, and it is beautiful. My goodness, what a gorgeous province. But I'll tell you what, the number of ding-dang municipalities I went through that had these goofy 30 and 40 kilometer per hour speed limits all over the ding-dang place. It's actually quite miserable to try to make your way through. It's too much. It's too much. We must have the least safe roads in the entire world because everybody's got a speed camera, it seems, these days. And isn't that a curious thing? I've got more thoughts on it that I'll share as this week goes on and our time goes on together, because we get 4 hours every day to have conversations. And as I look ahead to our show tomorrow, how about those menacing e-scooters all over our sidewalks and trails and the havoc that they're creating? We'll talk about that on the show tomorrow. And I guess I missed well, I won't call it a little tiff. How about a pretty big tiff between the mayor of Cambridge and one of the city councillors there? We'll try to get to the bottom of that on tomorrow's show, and lots more. So I'll tell you what, I'll be back tomorrow at 9 if you join me then, okay? Devin Robertson, our guy on the other side of the glass. My name is Mike Farwell. You are a force for good. Bye for now.